Hey everyone, welcome back to the Frugal Kitchen. Today I am making lemon strawberry blondies, bars. I wasn't sure what to call them. The recipe comes from the view from greatisland.com, which I'm hoping is like a really pretty place to live because otherwise my imagination is like outpacing the reality. I do not like that. So, this recipe is it cost me, excluding taxes, 97 cents to make this because I already had all the other stuff. And I know that's not really an accurate way of estimating cost, but I will I will have to figure it out and put it at the end what it actually costs to make this. It does not cost a lot, and the strawberries were on sale, which is why I said 97 cents because I remember how much they were. Actually, it cost me less than that because I didn't use that whole container. That is 16 ounces of strawberries, and the recipe says to start by slicing up a cup of strawberries. And I am making much more than a cup because I said we have to have more strawberries. So out of 16 ounces, this is what I had left. Probably half the strawberries were used. And now I am going to measure out my lemon juice just because I realized I did not probably have enough for the recipe. So I'm doing that right now. I need a quarter cup for the batter and a tablespoon for the frosting. So I'm going to try and see if we've got a quarter cup here, and we do. Joy to the world. And now I'm going to just throw in whatever's left. So not quite a tablespoon, but I'm gonna put it in there and separate that later. I am just gonna keep that, store that in that container. So we're gonna take a cup of butter or vegan margarine if you want to make this vegan, and cream it with some sugar or sugar substitutes if you want this to be low carb for your diabetic friends or your diabetic self or your pre-diabetic self. We need 3/4 cup of white sugar, granulated sugar, whatever you see in the recipes. I usually just write the word sugar if I mean granulated white sugar. That's probably wrong. So I'm going to do 2/4 cup of sucralose and 1/4 cup of refined white sugar, which is usually how I do it if there is an uneven amount. I prefer to have a little bit extra sucralose just because, like I said, my pre-diabetes is crazy. The A1C is quite high for someone who barely eats. And as you can tell on the camera when you see me, my arms aren't that big. So I'm a pretty skinny person, and my A1C is that of someone who weighs 50 pounds heavier. That is what the sugar and butter looks like. And now we're going to make an egg substitute. If you want this to be vegan, you can go ahead and use your favorite single egg substitute. Mine is 1 tablespoon of cornstarch mixed with 3 tablespoons of water and then whisked together. And you do want to separate this stuff. Don't just throw water and cornstarch in your stand mixer because it won't form correctly. You do want it to kind of be separate. Whisk it separately. Make it a separate ingredient all its own, then throw it in there. Now mix again on medium or high. I don't think it matters that much. The recipe probably doesn't even say. Beat in the egg. There you go. So whatever speed. And then it kind of looks like shiny and smooth when it was finished after the egg substitute was added. So now I'm taking out a tablespoon of lemon juice. And I am putting in a 1/4 cup of lemon juice to the bowl. I'm sorry that my camera was angled weird and that you couldn't tell that it was lemon juice and not some other random yellow liquid going in the bowl, like Kool-Aid. I wonder if you could just substitute lemon Kool-Aid for this sort of thing. Should I keep bags of lemon Kool-Aid in the house? Does lemon Kool-Aid have sugar in it? Or does it just have flavoring? I have to look into that. I mean, I don't really run out of lemon juice very often, and you can see it didn't mix very well. The juice is kind of still sitting very liquid in the bowl. But would it be helpful to keep flavorings around? Like, could I have made this more strawberry flavored with some strawberry Kool-Aid just dumped in, like just the powder dumped into the bowl? Is that something I should try? Tell me now. So now we're going to put the dry ingredients into a separate bowl. This is 2 1/4 cups of flour. The recipe says all-purpose flour, but if you have been here a while, you know I always use whole wheat just because the fiber content is a little more diabetic friendly. And I have apparently also run out of flour, perhaps. So this was fun. I didn't run out of flour. I had bought some before I made this, but I never filled it up because I like to keep the old stuff on top, especially with flour and spices. So if I can help it, I just won't put the new stuff in just because, why don't want to like put the old stuff on top? I'd rather just wait. So here I am waiting. This is what it looks like when you do it as you're cooking instead of decanting everything when you get home. So here's my bag of flour, and you might notice, or maybe I'll have to tell you, that bag says white whole wheat flour. And my old bag, which you didn't see because it's in a plastic Rubbermaid container, says just whole wheat flour. I don't think it has a color attached to it on the label. And so the new stuff is much lighter. And I have noticed a difference when I'm baking too. It tastes the same, but the stuff that's white, you don't really notice that it's whole wheat at all because you can't see much of a difference. So that's interesting. So now we're going to do 1/2 teaspoon of baking powder and 1/2 teaspoon of salt. And then we're going to whisk that together so that it mixes well before you actually throw it in. I don't know if this matters all that much. I think it just helps the small quantity of baking powder actually separate so that stuff rises properly. And I'm going to just do half the bowl at a time. The recipe doesn't specify that. And if you have a bowl with a pour spout, you probably don't have to worry about doing that because that is my new worst enemy, bowls without pour spouts. Now pour the rest of the dry ingredients in and mix that on medium or high, whatever you prefer. And then we'll be adding in the strawberries. So here is what the batter looks like when it's done, and I'm tasting it, and it's got a slight lemon flavor. I think if you want more lemon, you may have to adjust some of the ingredients, because if you put extra lemon juice in, then it'll be too thin and liquidy. So I'm actually measuring out a cup of strawberries to see if it's enough, in my opinion. And this is one of the great things. People always say that baking's hard because you have to have everything so precise. You have to measure. When I can't measure, you can measure. And also, you can just throw in a bunch of strawberries if you want to. Like, it doesn't matter sometimes if all of the ingredients are precise. I have messed up a lot of baked goods. And one thing I think I like about baking, as opposed to cooking, we'll just call them dinners, savory meals, is that you can mess up a baked good, and for the most part, it's usually still pretty good. Like, because you're eating sugar, so who doesn't like that? Or at least I used to be eating sugar. When I was young and cooking and didn't know what I was doing, it was like, well, it doesn't matter if I ruin these cookies and burn them, and I can scrape off the burnt part and still enjoy the cookie because it still tastes good. It's still got sugar and chocolate in it, or peanut butter, and who's going to not want to eat that? So even if you have the wrong quantity of one of the ingredients, no big deal. So you saw I threw in all the rest of my strawberries. Again, this was half of what came in that 16-ounce container. I think that's 16 ounces. I already threw away the container, so sorry if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty, whatever size they normally sell strawberries as. And I figured that was enough strawberries. I said, oh, good, this is the amount of strawberries I wanted. I didn't want it to be like a surprise. Surprise, you've strawberry in this bite. I wanted to make sure that there were strawberries in every bite. So the recipe says to line a 9 by 9 pan with parchment paper. I only have 8 by 8 pans. I didn't even realize that till a week ago. So that's odd. Not a big deal. It just means my goods are taller, so they still always fit. And I don't think you need the parchment paper. I did not find that this would have stuck unforgivingly to the sides of the pan that you're using. So if you don't have one, cool, just spray it with oil like you might, and then kind of spread it out, pat it down, make sure it's as even as it can be. Now it says you're supposed to bake it at 350 for 30 to 35 minutes, and I'm going to go between that. I think I did 33. So bake it for that. The recipe also says to, for the love of God, don't overcook this. And I don't think that matters. I will show you a secret if you happen to overcook this. We're going to make the frosting now. It's not really a frosting. It's supposed to be a glaze. Honestly, the photo looks like it's a frosting. The photo looks like pink icing from the cakes on the cafeteria food cakes. But I personally wanted a bit more of a glaze than a frosting. So the recipe says that you need to take that you need a cup of powdered sugar. And if you have been here any length of time, you know that I don't keep powdered sugar because I have a Vitamix and I can make my own. So I'm taking a cup, and then I used sucralose, and I threw some in there, and then I finished it off with sugar. Did not measure it halfway because I think I just wanted to use up that 1 cup thing that I had from the strawberries. I prefer to not dirty extra cooking utensils if I don't have to. And then I made powdered sugar here, and I'll show you. Well, all that like smoke is just powdered sugar, and then yeah, you can see it's kind of falling apart. So that means it's powdered. It's good.
I can't resist. I don't think that I could ever blame you.
The recipe says you need 2 strawberries for the topping. You can probably use more. I decided to slice up my other strawberries and stick them in the freezer. If you're liking this video and this recipe, please like, share, and subscribe and help me reach more people. So the recipe says to throw the strawberries in a food processor, but like I mentioned earlier, I didn't want to dirty something else. So I thought, oh, I'll throw them in the Vitamix. They'll be fine. Little did I know the Vitamix doesn't work very well unless there's not much air around the blades. And with the strawberries, they were not the right size or quantity for this. So, whatever, I don't have the greatest strawberries for my topping. The recipe also says that you need to strain the strawberries and kind of like get the liquid out of them. And I was kind of hesitant about this. I thought, let me hang on to this liquid, this strawberry juice, in case I need it in the future. Because I'm finding with my sugar substitutes, especially, these dessert recipes I find they're not what I imagine they're going to be when I'm finished. And it's partially because things don't cook that great with the sucralose. It doesn't allow things to spread. Like sugar will let your dough spread. And part of it is just other reasons. So then you take the strawberries that have been strained and you mix them with the 1 tablespoon of lemon juice. And then you will eventually mix that with the sugar. So that is what the dough looks like after it's finished, but I didn't like that, so I threw it in for another 3 minutes, and my God, it looked exactly the same. But it was hard on top, so I said, "Fine, it's done." The lady said not to overcook it, and I said, "I trust you, lady." So once it's fully cooled, you can go ahead and mix up the frosting, the glaze, whatever you're planning on calling it, and adding it to the top.
If you hesitated, but you keep looking like you're hungry, babe. So come here and tell me what you want to say. I know what you want, babe. We want the same thing. I know what you want, babe.
So the frosting looked a little sticky to me, and I think that's just because I was picturing it like my Lemon Blondies, which has a very thin glaze that's not really a glaze, it's more like a juice that soaks into the batter after it's cooked. So I threw in the extra strawberry juice and stirred it up, and that was the consistency I was looking for. So pour it on, spread it out. So I'm just going to jump the gun and tell you that I don't think I cooked the batter enough because I was afraid because of the warning on this recipe. I think it's no big deal if you overcook it. Like I was trying to figure out what does it need to be so soft for. It really did taste raw to me. Like I could taste the raw flour, which was weird. So I would say definitely cook it enough. Make sure it gets brown, not like mine. My other recommendation is that I didn't realize this recipe was just supposed to be a little bit of a hint of lemon, and I like a lot of lemon. So, what I would probably do in the future is just make my lemon blondies recipe, and instead of the lemon glaze, do this glaze and throw in strawberries, and that would be probably the exact recipe I was looking for. So I hope you enjoyed this. It was very good. I will say, oh, one more thing is that if you want the frosting to kind of seep into the batter, especially if you overcook it for some reason, poke a bunch of holes in it with a toothpick, then pour the glaze on, and you will have a moist uh, blondie. And just keep it in the fridge if you do that because that does go bad a little faster. So I hope you enjoyed this. It was very tasty. I'm still eating them and they are very good. And happy eating.